We're at the top of the hour. We'll get started in just a few minutes. If you're just joining us, we'll get started in a few minutes. Good morning. We're going to get started. Welcome to H1's webinar series, One-on-One with H1. We're happy you joined us. I'm H1's Director of Integrated Marketing, Elizabeth Bunnell, and we thank you for joining us today. Our presenters are Laura Taylor, H1's Director of Product Management, and Alexandra Moens, H1's Director of Product Marketing. Today's topic is Past the Podium, the Future Tech Stack for KOL Engagement. Before we get started, I would just like to go over a few housekeeping items. We want this to be an interactive event, but in order to minimize disruptions for the speakers, if you have a question, we like to ask that you please type it in the chat. We will have a couple of interactive polls, and feel free to type the answers for those in the chat as well. Let me introduce you to today's speakers. Laura Taylor has worked in health tech for nearly 10 years. Including time on the other side, working directly with KOLs in clinical and academic research. For the past several years, her focus has been on scaling health tech startups, including Vesta Healthcare and now H1. She got her start as a UX designer and researcher and is passionate about user-centric tech approaches. She's been at H1 for a year and a half. Alexandra Moens is a PharmD who has been part of the clinical industry for over 6 years. Her aim is to make a positive impact on patient lives by working with innovative solutions, implementing enhanced clinical strategies, and increasing diversity and equity in the drug development lifecycle. Her scientific background and experience working with pharmaceutical partners hand in hand have positively impacted clinical teams to get new insights to successfully manage their portfolio strategy in the fast-evolving clinical industry. And a little bit about H1. H1 is the connecting force for global HCP, clinical, scientific, and research information. The H1 Connect platform democratizes access to HCP knowledge and groundbreaking insights for life sciences, academic medical institutions, health systems, and payers. H1 Connect fuels a robust product suite that helps customers discover and engage industry experts, drive equitable research, access groundbreaking science, and accelerate commercial success with the most robust and accurate healthcare professional data. So let's get started. Today's agenda. We're going to cover some state of the industry efforts to reduce the burden of cost and time to bring a drug to market, an example of a slice of KOLs to engage, and best practices for and use of next-gen technology and data optimization to support these efforts and surface insights. And finally, best practices and ideas to support finding experts, types of KOLs, and an industry case study. And with that, I will thank you for joining us, and I will kick it off to Alexandra.
Perfect. Thank you. Can you hear me okay?
I can. Thank you.
Perfect. Okay, so Thank you all for joining us today. As pharma and medical affairs world in particular has been going through a number of big changes and evolutions lately, we've been looking at these changes and evolutions into 6 different buckets, as we call them. And just by quickly walking through them, the first one would be disruption, as HCPs have to adapt to new modes of care, manage pandemic economics, but MSLs also need to be delivering much more value within their short HCP interactions these days. Second is the digital transformation. Not only does this impact the way that we have been interacting with each other, but it also has been changing the way that we are measuring influence of people. Compliance has also been changing significantly with an increased scrutiny around objectivity in KOL selection. And the competition element has also been changing because where companies used to just look at experience itself within the clinical sector, what they really want to be looking at now is working with KOLs who both have clinical and R&D experience to really gain that competitive advantage against each other. And then from that experience perspective, what we've also been seeing lately is that KOLs don't just need to have that information knowledge around safety and efficiency of drugs, but also related to the total cost of care, as that has become equally as important these days. The last bucket, but definitely not the least important one, is related to transparency. There's an increased need for transparency, and this is really changing the way that industry is operating and is driving the direction of data being available. So with all of these evolutions that pharma is going through, it also means that there is an increased need to find influential and knowledgeable key opinion leaders based on these new criteria, as well as finding a difference in voice. Now, what we are really doing is exploring some out-of-the-box ideas of where and how we can find these new and emerging KOLs that would also have a difference in voice, and looking at all of this through the lens of technology and data to create a new runway to narrow time, burden, and cost of bringing drugs to market. Now, overall, what we're all craving is in healthcare is more true connection. For Med Affairs and MSLs, this is happening in novel ways. Next slide, please. Now, let's take a step back and look at the cost and effort associated to bringing life-saving treatments to markets. It takes about 14 years and roughly $2.6 billion to bring a new drug to markets. And knowing that about 30% of the world's data volume is actually generated by the healthcare industry, we start questioning why there aren't any better ways to exchange this data, share it, and surface those much needed insights that could help reduce this incredibly high cost and burden. There's clearly a big disconnect on bringing the right data to the right people who actually need this data and can leverage it in the most optimized ways. Now, before we can really start thinking about reducing this effort and the impact that all of this could have on diversity and health equity, there's a couple of additional challenges that we need to consider. One is the information highlighting physician and patient diversity demographics in general is limited. Think about Europe, for example, where this kind of information is often not clearly captured. The global healthcare data and analytics market are very opaque and highly fragmented. Collecting, cleaning, curating, all of this constantly changing data together in a manual effort often takes months, if not years. And data regarding the efficiency and availability of new treatments is most likely siloed off within organizations. So in this webinar, what we really want to do is taking a quick look at one of these aspects that could help bring drugs to markets by accessing good lists of KOLs and the ways to slice the data and start chipping away at these numbers. We think about the tools that are necessary to start all of this effort. And when we think about that, we start thinking related to optimization of data management and data sources, how we can decrease that heavy lift and get treatments to market faster and in a more equitable way, and how to analyze and differentiate healthcare professionals that can really positively impact this. Next slide, please.
So we have a poll. How are you currently accessing KOL lists? And feel free to type your answer in the chat. A, manual search. B, vendor partner data assessment. C, in-house technology. Or D, we don't currently do this. And while we're waiting for those results to populate, do you have any insight, Alexandra or Laura, just in what you've seen generally in the industry with what's common practice with how a lot of people surface KOL lists right now? Is it manual mostly?
From my experience, a lot of companies tend to do a lot of manual searches combined with vendor partners, but what they will always try to do is also have that vendor partner or data assessment to combined with the manual search just to verify what their vendor partner has been telling them. So there's often also a little bit of a lack of full transparency and trust because they don't necessarily know where all of this information is coming from. And so they would prefer to also have that manual search component implemented there.
Makes sense. And that aligns with the answer we got. Did you have something, Laura?
I just would agree. I think that we definitely see that desire to cross-reference and get a validation from more than one source to really help identify the KOLs and HCPs to focus the most on. And yeah, I see we kind of have that validated from our
answer
response.
Yeah, awesome.
At the end of the day, what it really just comes down to is working with the right HCPs. But what does right really mean? Because right can mean a number of different things for different companies, even within the company for different teams. So let's look at some different types of opinion leaders that we within H1 are using or referencing towards. So the first group would be the typical one, the key opinion leaders. Typically very well-established physicians or PhDs who are well-known and experts in their field. They regularly publish papers, attend and speak at conferences, sit on pharma advisory boards, those kind of things. These are the known suspects, as we would call them. The second group is a slightly new group. It's been an emerging group, which we call the digital opinion leaders. Credentialed medical specialists with significant digital reach who are producing and disseminating relevant scientific content online. Now, this can really be anyone from a healthcare professional to a scientific writer or anyone in between who has an influence and a digital voice into the community. Now, unlike social media influencers, DWLs are not trying to self-promote. They are rather but their interest is in educating and engaging and even challenging their followers. So they are more experts that are providing clear and concise scientific communication in a virtual way, while having that professional credential and credibility to back up their statements. Then you got the third group, which are the rising stars. They're considered the needles in a haystack. The HCPs who are very early on in their career that are clearly incredibly talented, but not necessarily have had a full chance to prove themselves as actual KOLs, key opinion leaders. We also call them a little bit the unicorns in their fields, because this group is a group that a lot of our clients and a lot of companies feel like they want to be engaging with really early on. But when we really start listening to the needs that our individual customers and users are mentioning to us, in reality, in a lot of cases, people are not necessarily looking for these rising stars as such, but they're looking for untapped potential. And for that, we have identified a fourth group together with our team of experts, of course, and we've been able to define what that fourth group of untapped potential really would mean. Next slide. We call these people uncut gems, general experts and meaningful stars. These are the thought leaders and HCPs who tend to fall under the radar, but are considered to have very much undiscovered talent. These are HCPs who have that significant experience in a given therapeutic area and have usually also come with a bunch of fresh ideas and views within their field of excellence. They're not really KOL leaders, key opinion leaders yet, but they also can't really categorize as, treatment leaders or rising stars. So they're kind of that group that falls between the cracks. And that's why we have been able to really define that group of who would fall under this group, and not only being able to define them, but also being able to identify them. And that's a big difference. Now, if we go to the next slide, before we really start to help our customers find those, what we would say, right HCPs for them, we always start by asking them a number of discovery questions to better understand their challenges based on what we know technology like our own can help solve. And I'm sure some of these questions and the answers will resonate with you guys, but please feel free to add in the chats some other responses that you might have for some of these. So if we look at that, it's going to be more about, okay, why are you looking for emerging experts? We keep going back to the same list of HCPs for years. Our competitive engagement strategies have become very difficult. KOLs are often getting competing offers from other market leaders. Another question that we really want to get an answer to is, what exactly are your intentions with these people? Not because we really need to know, but more because that helps us with that identification process. We want to be inviting new HCPs to speak for us at a conference, or we're trying to expand the territory of some of our MSLs with new HCPs. Things like, are there specific timelines to keep in mind, or do you have specific countries that you are trying to keep in mind? Obviously, usually you get similar types of answers on, our focus is currently US or EU5 or Asia Pacific, or we have a phase 2 study results coming in early 2023. So we want to start planning to make sure that we're all done with our tactics before all of this happens. So what often happens here as well is that a lot of people are fishing in the same pool of people, and that's tricky. So it's important to get a better sense into, are these people the right people because they have expertise within, for example, modes of actions or mutations that you're really looking for? Or are they just the people that you always tend to fall back on? And really finding that difference, understanding why one is not necessarily the same as the other, and why one HCP you would be able to engage with would not necessarily mean that it's the same person as one of your competitors would want to be engaging with. That is something that we tend to really put an extra emphasis on by listening to our customer needs and really bringing that to life in the analysis results that we are exploring. If there are any other answers that you think would be relevant in this case, please feel free to add those in the chat, of course. Now, if we go to the next slide, what we have seen here is that the way that technology can really have a big role into how we can empower these answers to a lot of the questions from before. And McKinsey has actually done an assessment on this not too long ago, where they've looked at, okay, what are the key criteria that they feel are critical, where data and tech combined can enable better decision-making, from KOL sourcing all the way through R&D, actually. And they've come up with three key criteria. The first one being patient and healthcare professional-centered design thinking. So really making sure that the patients and the HCP are always in our minds whenever we're making any kind of decision, and incorporating that really from program developments through trial design to trial execution to the approval and launch processes. If we're making sure that we are keeping that segment always at our priority and making sure that we are listening to the priorities that they have or the concerns that they have, that's a big impacting factor. The second is the digital and technology enablement that allows automation of highly repetitive processes. Now, what does that really mean? What they're saying here is any process that can be replaced by technology and automation any process that is tend to be done by humans can be replaced by technology and automation should actually be replaced that way, because it is going to significantly improve the speed and often also the quality of the outputs. And what they're saying next to that is this can also generate new insights and new data. And that new insights and data elements, that is really what's driving the third pillar, the advanced analytics. And personally, this is what I think is going to really have the biggest impact, especially on a longer term, because advanced analytics and including predictive modeling can help drive informed decisions through the combination of internal and external data sources combined. And that really improves decision-making, equality, and speed. If we take all of these three elements into consideration, McKinsey is convinced that this can easily reduce the time to market of a drug by 500 days and with a 25% reduction in costs of bringing a new treatment to market. Next slide, please.
Thanks, Alexandra. So I think hopefully that sort of drives home that there's a lot of potential to better utilize tech in answering some of the questions that have been coming up for us today. Bringing all of that knowledge together can become very manual and very time consuming. But we really do believe that with the right tech tools and data, AI empowered insights, it doesn't have to be such a arduous and expensive process. And we have the opportunity to get to even deeper, high quality analysis. So I think we can take an example to kind of go a bit further into this, which is identifying those digital opinion leaders. Obviously a hot topic right now, and also very relevant when we're thinking about identifying those uncut gems and other kinds of providers that may not be quite in line with that absolutely traditional KOL identification. But as these emerging indicators are coming up, we're really finding that it's the best way to get to a more inclusive ranking of HCPs that are worth focusing on. We're developing best practices right now for using tech and using data to help us identify and reach out to digital opinion leaders. And I'd love to kind of share a couple of those best practices with you. We're finding that we can use tech enablement to really prioritize HCPs that embody key attributes. So from a digital perspective, their overall reach, it must be influential, it must be strong. Do they have a strong scientific background? That also becomes a key question for us. So looking outside of their digital kind of content that they're sharing, and also looking at the publications, their trials, any Congress speaking sessions. We want to understand that they have a strong scientific background as well. And when we look at the actual content that they're posting, we want to see that it's high quality and consistent. So as Alex kind of pointed out earlier, this shouldn't be someone that's just promoting their practice or their opinions. It should be someone that we can see is posting high quality, scientifically validated content that has a strong educational perspective associated with it. We also see that selecting topics of interest that align best with your business strategy is a key kind of part of identifying the right HCPs to focus on, identifying opportunities to engage and contribute to the discussion, which is especially interesting when it comes to digital leadership, where you can have a bit of a better understanding about what that perspective is from the start. And then strategic engagement planning. So understanding not just who we might want to reach out with, but thinking about how that fits into your overall strategy for who to focus on when it comes to engagement, and how to best utilize that time, which we know can be very short when it kind of comes down to the actual interaction you might have with an HCP. Next slide, please. So with that in mind, those sort of high-level best practices, I think we can dig a little bit deeper into a sort of bit of a case study of how we go about identifying a potential digital opinion leader. Once we've used those best practices to get to list of potential HCPs that are making a meaningful social impact. These are the kinds of things that we want to dig a little bit deeper into to understand their sort of full potential. So first of all, looking at top KOLs on Twitter, we want to understand this by first starting with a particular therapeutic area. And it might be that a particular provider is relevant in multiple therapeutic areas, but we really want to start with the indication or at least treatment area that we know is relevant. From there, we don't actually want to start on Twitter necessarily. We want to assess their claims, their clinical trials, Congress activity, and understand, based on the H1 platform, their overall sort of status as a medical expert. From there, of course, we also are looking at their Twitter profile, right? When we say profile, we're thinking about it just the way you'd profile any other HCP. We want to look at their stats, basically. How many people follow them? How frequently are they posting? Their sort of overall metrics as a potential influencer. From there, we want to understand a bit more about what they're tweeting about. When we think about doing this in a technologically enabled way, there are a lot of tools that help us analyze their keywords that they're using, hashtags, their overall timeline, conferences that they may be attending or posting hashtags related to. All of these things help us, especially when we look at them in a more tech-enabled way, assess the overall content that this person is focused on commenting about. We also can assess their network via their Twitter profile. So when we look at their followers, who makes up that group? Are they other HCPs? Are they more like patients or potential advocates? Are they people that don't necessarily fall into that group but are just interested in the overall education? There's a lot that we can glean from understanding a bit more about the social connections that they've formed on their profile. And then lastly, we want to look at audience receptivity. So how wide is the audience that's receiving their tweets? And we can look at that in a number of ways, the sort of overall penetration of the content that they're creating. Are they being retweeted by other people? Do we see that the kinds of content that they're tweeting ends up being considered kind of trending? Are they posting content that is of high quality? We can also look at their keyword volume over time and understand what topics they're most focused on and how that changes. That helps us validate if they're really an expert that's relevant, not just in your TA, but in your specific sort of indication or targets of interest. And it helps us make sure that the folks that we're identifying actually are most relevant to your specific kind of very focused strategy. Of course, some of these things we can analyze without tech enablement, but it becomes very challenging and very time consuming, especially when we're looking at the kind of deeper analysis that we can do related to an HCP's network and the way that their keywords and content are changing over time. So I think we're finding that it's certainly very helpful when we are assessing the actual DOL status of a potential DOL to use these tools that help us get to a deeper analysis faster. In a moment, I'd really like to take us through a kind of real example of a profile and kind of dig in a little bit deeper here. But first, we'd love to know a little bit more about how you approach digital opinion leader identification. Next slide.
And Laura, I think because we're running up a little bit against time, we're going to skip ahead to the Twitter profile, and I will be sending these slides out after the presentation. So if there's anything that isn't covered, you can definitely reference the slides.
Yeah, absolutely. I can go through this one quickly. I think one thing that we hear when we talk with our clients about the question in the poll, which is like, how are you doing this right now? It's that digital opinion leadership is emerging as a really important factor in how we rank HCPs that have the potential to become KOLs or are at least interesting for engagement. And so you can see in this diagram here, we're looking at a variety of factors, and digital is one of them. This helps us to identify folks that might necessarily fall through the cracks if we weren't considering this sort of new metric. Next slide. And I know we're about at time here, so we can, I think, come close to wrapping it up here, but I'd love to just quickly touch on what we're seeing in an example of DOL that has a lot of potential. So you can see in blue stats that we would have collected using tech enablement. So including their sort of overall assessment of their scientific background, their overall social score for us, and then the top terms that they're tweeting about. We can see between that and looking at the actual content that this doctor is a really strong candidate as a DOL because they're posting content that has a strong educational focus. It's based on content that is validated by ASCO and other high quality sources. And they really seem very focused on providing a curated perspective in their field, which is non-small cell lung cancer, rather than something that's more about self-promotion. So this could be a really relevant HCP that otherwise might have fallen through the cracks of more traditional assessment that we really, could become an important figure in a medical strategy. Next slide.
Are we ready to wrap it up? Did you have, sorry about that. There we
No problem. Thank you so much for taking the time to connect with us today. As Elizabeth said, I think we'll be able to share these out. Overall, I think we see a lot of potential to utilize technology to get to a wider range of HCPs that can help us do what we all care the most about, which is bring drugs to market that impact patients' outcomes in a positive way. Do it faster.
Thank you, Laura and Alexandra. Thank you for joining one-on-one with H1. We really appreciate our presenters. I will be sending this slide deck out and as well as a recording of the event. If you'd like to learn more about H1, visit www.h1.co, or you can email me at elizabeth.fennell@h1.co. Thank you, everyone. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you.